Hello and welcome back to another YouTube video. So today I'm going to be doing my 14.2b support tier list. So if you enjoy the content, like, subscribe, and let's get into it. So to begin with, the support category is kind of interesting at the moment. There are a lot of really good champions which you can play. There isn't, I would say, a particularly large amount of bad ones. Most champions within the support role are very much viable at the moment. But then there are clear winners. There are champions which are really taking over solo queue with a storm at the moment. And definitely, they're worth playing. They're really good. So let's get into it. To begin with, Braum is going to be within my A tier. Braum is fine. He is a solid option when you need some form of anti-engage. He is very valuable with certain pairings where you can utilize his passive, getting CC chains going. He does struggle into some of the enchanters, so it can be kind of hard to play him as like a blind pick, but he's still a solid option, a solid A tier pick. Seraphine is going to be within my B tier. Seraphine, not too great support, but is definitely a good ADC. In fact, one of the best ADC APC options. Definitely worth playing there. As a support, doesn't tend to get as many resources as she needs. Pairs a lot better as an APC with some of the other support options, whereas she doesn't pair so well as a support with ADC options. So take it as you will. She's a fine option, definitely, but better as an APC. Nautilus is going to be within my B tier. This might surprise a lot of people. I don't believe Nautilus is I believe Nautilus is one of the weaker hook champions at the moment. In fact, he can go alongside Fresh within the B tier. Both these champions just aren't as well. I haven't found their footing as well this season as last season. They lost the likes of Even Shroud, which definitely did hurt them. If I was to recommend any sort of hook support, then something like a Blitzcrank. Pyke is getting buffed next patch, which is a big surprise considering he is relatively strong in solo queue at the moment if you build him correctly. So yeah, these two champs going to be within the B tier. Not bad options, but not as strong as a lot of the other hook options in the game. Zac is going to be within my S tier. He's more of a niche pick. In fact, I'm going to put him alongside Poppy, as both these champions are niche support pair picks, which you can utilize. Poppy, in Poppy's case, as an anti-engage option. She's very good with, she's very valuable with her W. She can very easily shut down a lot of ADCs. Her builds are very strong at the moment. There's lots of utility on this champion, so very powerful pick there. And Zac got buffed very early on into the season when he wasn't able to find his footing with a lot of the items. And now he's in an incredible spot. Can utilize a lot of the tank options. Really likes the likes of Kaenic Rooken, Spirits, of course. You can opt into things like Barmies. Of course, there are other tank options there. But yeah, Zac doing really well at the moment. Leandri's also very solid on him. Maokai going to be within my S plus tier. So Maokai has an incredibly high solo queue win rate. I think a bit of it is fake, obviously. As people, he's the most niche out of the top tier picks at the moment, and it's mostly one tricks who are playing him. Of course, as more people opt into playing this champion, his win rate should get lower, but it's still incredibly high. He's very strong, getting nerfed next patch, but definitely worth picking up. And I imagine even with the nerfs, probably worth still learning. Zyra is going to be within my S tier. So Zyra, like Brand, both these two champs are very valuable at the moment. Work really well with Leandris, do a huge amount of damage. Of course, Brand did get hotfixed nerfed, but he is still very strong. He is being nerfed again. Zyra is receiving a couple of adjustments. They are actually mostly going to be net positive, I believe. So she will stay within the S tier, maybe even rise up to the S plus tier with Maokai taking a bit of a hit. But yeah, both these champs very solid options at the moment. Janna is also going to be within my S plus tier. Pair Janna with most champions in the game and you will have good success. Champs, not the most difficult, but you do want to be able to pilot it correctly. She has strong roams, good mobility, good CC, good peel, heal and shield power. There's just so much value to this champion. She is a very solid S plus tier option at the moment. Blitzcrank is going to be within the S tier. He did get nerfed this patch. He lost 20% ADA ratio on the E. He lost 3 armor. It has put him in a bit of a weaker spot, but he's definitely the premier hook option at the moment. He sees a bit of pro play, which is always good, and yeah, solid S tier option. Ashe isn't doing too badly. Not a bad B tier option. The likes of Imperial Mandate, Umbral Glaive, Bloodsong all work quite nicely on her. There's decent value playing this champion. She works really well as a lane bully alongside certain pairings. Yeah, just a strong champion. Well, just a relatively strong champion. Rakan, one of the best options at the moment. Not quite S plus tier. There are 4 champions in my S plus tier at the moment, as all 4 of these champs are really strong in their current states. But Rakan is the closest you're going to get to the S plus tier. He is very good, very solid premier engage option. He just doesn't do as well into some of the S plus options, and you do want to pilot a champion well. Yeah, lots of success with that. Rel is going to be within my S tier. Rel, very solid engage option, good flex pick as well, can go into the jungle, same goes for Brand. Yeah, both these champions are very valuable. Rel, not so much as good of a jungler as Brand, but there's definitely value there. Another solid engage option, her shield break on Q is really valuable, her CC, her team fighting, there's lots of value to this champion. Nami is going to be within my, where did I put Nami? I put Nami within the A tier, actually, yeah, because solid pairings, works really well with like Brand, Karthus, Lucian. All 3 of these champions are very strong pairings with her. She can also work as a standalone along certain options, but you definitely want to focus on those premier 3 options. Yeah, not a bad champion, solid A tier. Lux is going to be even my B tier. They're just better, but, well, not burstier options. She's one of the better burst options, in fact. But some of the AP damage threats in the bot lane can spike up really nicely with one item, being Leandri's for the most part. And she just doesn't have that power. The likes of Brand, Zyra, Swain, for example. Swain is a bit weaker than the other 2. Works better as like an APC or a mid laner, but still a solid option. Lux finds herself within the B tier. She did get buffed very early on to the season. She's decent in mid, decent as a support. Yeah, you can play her in both. Nico is going to be in my A tier. Nico, solid option as well. Does a bit more damage than Lux. Looking at something like a Protobelt, Storm Surge variant. You can opt into Zhonya's. The builds are there. Just lots of CC, lots of damage. Good valuable champion. Camille's support is a bit on the rise at the moment. Obviously, she received early game buffs this patch. Movement speed on my Q. Passive shield goes down a bit early. And I believe she gained a bit of base health. Overall, these have definitely helped her in being an early game champion. Obviously, she's a bit elite skewed. You don't tend to see this pick that much lower down. I wouldn't really recommend playing it a bit lower down, as some people would like consider it troll. Because it's not as common as a lot of the other supports. But if you can execute it well, then there is lots of value to this pick. Something like a Halo Blades tree is what you tend to run. And then I've seen people go different options, Sundered Sky, Sterix. There are some build variations. Kind of pick what you need within the game. And yeah, the champ has value. Senna is going to be in my S plus tier. Senna is an incredibly strong pick at the moment. Works really well with some of the lethality options. Hubris, Youmuu's, Collector, Edge of Night, Sherelda's. It works really well with Bloodsong, which is a very good support item. Overall, this champion just performs really well with some of the options, and of course, Youmuu's is being nerfed next patch, which does hurt her. Do I imagine she'll suddenly differ on her first item? Probably not. I believe it is still correct to go Youmuu's, but Umbreglaive definitely does become a bit more of a option with this being nerfed. Zilean is going to be in my A tier. Zilean is not a bad support. He's definitely one of the higher A tier options. You just got to be able to utilize his kit. His revive is really, really powerful. The movement speed and the slows, the CC, there's lots of value to his kit. But if you're not able to land the bombs consistently, the movement speed isn't as or if the movement speed isn't as valuable in the game, then he is definitely hurt by that. I wouldn't really recommend learning Zilean, but if you do enjoy that type of champion, then go ahead. He's not bad. Yeah, there are just other options which I would recommend over him. Shaco is a solid A tier pick. He is being nerfed next patch for support role, as he is doing quite well within low elo. He's very frustrating to play against. He does a lot of damage. His traps are really obnoxious. A lot of champions can't actually break them without activating them. Yeah, there's value to this champion. He's more of a frustration point than anything. But yeah, not a bad pick. Leona, really good actually. I would very much recommend playing Leona in her current state. She's actually doing better than she has done for like the last 2 seasons. She received some buffs like later on last season, and she kind of went under the radar. She can utilize a lot of the items at the moment. Zeke's works quite nicely on her. You can of course go things like Locket. I wouldn't really recommend the first option though, and I'd kind of pick it in certain specific spots over just as a default. She can also utilize things like Night's Vow, Jackshaw if you're going like a tankier route, Frozen Heart, still a very good item, Kanik Rukun, like as a later option into AP Burst. There's options there. Yeah, very solid champion. Mumu is going to be my B tier. He lost even Shroud, and that definitely hurt him a decent amount. Also lost Radiant Virtue, so he lost his main item and his follow-up item. He's very simple to play, which is the main reason why he's in B tier, even though he has lost his 2 items. I imagine Mumu will get buffed in like 14.3 or 14.4. Or no, it'll be 14.4 as we've already seen 14.3. But yeah, I wouldn't recommend him at the moment, but if he does get buffed, then he will probably go back up to being a solid option. Pyke is going to be in my A tier. Surprisingly, they are buffing this champion next patch. He's not doing badly at the moment. He has access to some decent lethality options. Of course, the concern now is how good is Pyke mid going to be. We'll have to see. But yeah, Pyke is a very solid support option. If you like playing hook champs, then yeah, he's definitely good at the moment. Karma is probably the... Okay, so Karma's an interesting one. Karma is... Well, got buffed this patch. She is a very hot topic. She does a lot of damage. Obviously, things like Malignance combined with Imperial Mandate makes this champion do, huge amounts of damage. You can, of course, run things like Cosmic Drive, Horizon Focus. I'd say her weakest role is probably support, as you really do want to have her as like a solo lane, as she does that much DPS at the moment, and as a support she doesn't get access to as much resources, which she does kind of need. But yeah, solid mid laner, not as good as support, but still a fine support. Of course, if you're able to land your empowered Qs, she does huge chunks of damage. Doesn't scale as well as some of the other options, but doesn't fall off particularly badly either. Can become like a shielding bot. So yeah, solid A tier pick, close to the S tier, obviously, if you can partner the champion well. Taric is going to be on my A tier, solid anti-engage option, got nerfed early on into the season. I wouldn't recommend him over something like a Poppy if it is a good Poppy situation, but if you're not able to utilize something like a Poppy, and you can run something like a Taric Nyla, then he does have a lot of value. Sidus is going to be my B tier. You're not really going to play this champion in situations other than into like a Leona Varus duo or some form of double CC or strong ultimate combos, as he really kind of relies on that as a support. So I'd only really recommend him in those situations, but he's not a bad option. He can be really powerful in those situations. Galio is going to be in my B tier. He's like a low B tier option. He definitely struggles a lot more with the new item system than the old mythics. Night Harvester was really valuable for him as like a mid lane option. You can utilize some of the tankier options as a support, but he's definitely struggling compared to a lot of the other champions. Swain is going to be in my B tier. If you want to play Swain, play him mid, play him APC. He tends to be a very strong option in those roles. As a support, he doesn't quite get the resources he needs. Something like a Rylai will be what you mostly sit on for the game. But like Rylai, Liandry, Malignance, Zonya, you value all 4 of these items. If you can get them, you'll be incredibly strong and a solid frontline option. But when you're only really set on Rylai, you tend to struggle a bit more. Your utility's good and your teamfight drain tankiness isn't bad, but not quite as valuable as some of the other champions within the pool. Pantheon actually got a lot better this season. Honestly, was a bit of a surprise. Pantheon support was like a gimmicky pick. You only really played it if you were like really hooked on the fact that you could get a point and click CC and then like really heavy follow up. But this season, he's genuinely a solid option if you can pair it with good things and utilize his builds correctly, something like an Eclipse, something like a Sundered Sky, then he does huge amounts of damage. He's good frontline. He does, his value is still the W and the E. There's lots of power there. So yeah, solid B tier option. Not quite the higher tiers, but definitely no longer like a gimmicky troll pick. Alistar, going to be within my B tier. Not doing as well this season as last season. Obviously, he received a bunch of AP ratio changes last season, alongside some just standard buffs. Put him in a better spot, but this season, just not performing to the same level as a lot of the other supports, so he finds himself within the B tier. Bard is the premier support at the moment. I'm not going to lie, this champion's absolutely broken. He does ADC level damage whilst being tanky, as tanky as your tank. The build of like Frozen Heart and then like either Slay or Blood Song tends to be pretty valuable. You can get opts to things like Kaenic Rooken. But there's just so much power in this champion at the moment. They are going to change him on 14.4 to either lose a bit of durability to gain have him more focused on damage, or to lose some damage and put him into a bit more durability. But as that isn't going to be for this patch or even the next patch, he is the premier support option. I would really recommend learning him and playing him, as he tends to be pretty good most of the time. Annie is going to be within the B tier. She's fine. Works quite nicely with like Rylai, Malignance. I know some people still opt into the Shurelias. Not a bad option, but yeah, like a B tier pick. Heimerdinger actually going to be within the C tier. Not performing quite as well this season. Obviously, you still go things like Revival, either Leandri, and he does do decent damage, but there are other valuable supports at the moment. And he just doesn't really find his footing within the meta. Ashe is also weaker as an ADC option, and that was one of his core pairings, so not quite as much value there. Sona is going to be in my B tier. I'm not a Sona fan at the moment. I think this champion takes way too long to come online. Same goes for Soraka, if anything. Both these champions are really valuable as enchanter options, and obviously if you play around them, they can be really valuable. But as the game tempo can be very quick at the moment, and there's just lots of damage and lots of strong options. These two champions just aren't doing as well at the moment, and they find themselves within the B tier. Milio also going to be in the B tier. I know lots of people do think this champion's really good, and like if you compare it with things like Revolution and champions which really utilize its kit, then it can be valuable. But certain champions like Caitlyn just don't work that well with it and rely on other options. So he's not as flexible as a lot of picks, but if you pair him with the right things, he's not a bad option. Kind of like a high B, low A tier pick. Fiddlesticks is going to be within my B tier. He's a solid option, not quite as powerful as last season, where he was genuinely like a sleeper OP support pick. The tools just aren't there as much for them this season. Of course, you can still go things like Rylai, Leandri, Malignance. These items work well on him. Morello's is also an option. Zhonya's being a bit more expensive definitely does hurt him, as that was one of his core items. But yeah, solid B2 option. Teemo, also a great like a solid B2 option. Yeah, I mean, great in certain situations. Obviously, if you value the blind, then he's very powerful. Within certain situations, you tend to max Q if you're playing support, but he has received decent amounts of nerfs towards his ultimate. I believe he received nerfs towards his QAP ratio as well, and it just hurt, it hurt him enough to kind of just put him back down towards the B tier. He's still a solid option if you play around your shrooms. Like Leandri, Malignance are great options on this champion. He's very much spikes off these things. So yeah, solid there. Also can use Riftmaker if he needs to. Renata, going to be within my A tier. Renata's a very popular pro pick at the moment. In solo queue, she doesn't have the same kind of performance, but still a solid option if you're able to utilize Bailout and have the good pairings with her. Things like Varus, things like Ashe, things like, even things like Cogmore, who can utilize the W. Yeah, she works quite well with them, but just not as solid as some of the S tier options, so she goes in the A tier. Morgana is going to be within the B tier. Like a solid B tier option, though. Also someone who really benefits from currently Leandri's. Doesn't rely on mana as much as a support compared to some of her other roles. She can utilize Rylai quite well. Morello's also works quite nicely on her as like a third option into heavy heal comps. But yeah, solid B tier pick. Not quite as valuable as something like a Brand or a Zyra, but there is definitely value to the champion. Xerath, like I said before, hurt quite heavily by the removal of Lunan's Tempest. Lunan's Companion just isn't as good on him, so he finds himself within the B tier. Vel'Koz also going to move in the B tier. He's like another relatively similar poke option, if that's the kind of route you want to go as a support. They work quite nicely as lane bullies, but you don't tend to get the economy you need to kind of like scale them into late game. Of course, if you do snowball, then they have value, but yeah, you more focused around early, and they're like CC, the displacement on Vel'Koz E and stun on Xerath E. Hui is going to be in the C tier. I wouldn't recommend playing this champion as a support. If I think play him as like a mid laner, APC flex, he works quite nicely in both roles. Within the support, he just doesn't have the level of resources he needs unless, of course, you snowball. So yeah, definitely play him as like an APC or a mid laner, but he's not a bad support option. In fact, I'm going to wrap up the rest of the C tier, and that's going to be Yuumi. So Yuumi is obviously kept weak because she is a very big frustration point. No one really enjoys playing against Yuumi, so yeah, obviously kept weak. But still has decent pairings. So things like Revolution and Vizeri tend to go quite nicely alongside her. Twitch, also another one. Lulu is also in my C tier. She's just not performing that well at the moment. She got quite heavily nerfed because of competitive play and hasn't really found her footing since, so she finds herself within the C tier. Tahm Kench is in the C tier. He's just not a great support option. If you want to play Tahm Kench anywhere, play him in the top lane or with like a Senna pairing within the bot lane. As a standalone support, either you end up being too greedy because you need things like heart still and expensive tank items to keep yourself going throughout the game, or you end up not having the budget and just being kind of useless unless you can really find huge amounts of value out of your ultimate. yeah, he's more of a C tier pick. Not the worst thing, but yeah, C tier. And Twitch is going to be in the C tier. He's more of a gimmicky option. You tend to just run him with like Nashers and Rabadons. If you're able to get a big advantage early on into the game, then you can usually snowball and win it. But if you don't and people understand the playstyle, then he will just fall off and not be as useful as a lot of the other supports. Zoe, going to be the Mobita. She's the last champ here. Not a bad option. Her sleep has a lot of value if you pair it with with things which can make use of it. Her damage is relatively high. She very much doesn't rely on levels as much as a lot of the other champions, which is why she can kind of work on like a support budget. She's a solid option if you need her. But yeah, those are my thoughts on the support tier list. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.